I mean, look, we have to talk about this. We need to talk about NBA Top Shot again.
Oh my god!
I have this idea, right? And like, I think we should make our own version of Top Shot and call it like Busted Bucket, and it's just like, it's like all highlights of like missed dunks, but then you can only watch the highlights on Real Player or something like that. Like, I think that's like the perfect thing. We'll just like charge like half of whatever they charge for Top Shot and like just make all sorts of money.
So you remember how we talked about how the highlights, like, how am I supposed to know this isn't on YouTube?
Yeah.
Right.
And then look, I'll be honest. I signed up for Top Shot to see if I could score
They got
a pack. They got me. These clowns at Dapper or whatever that company is that's backing this stuff got me. And one of the highlights that they were promoting on it was Manu's dunk in the finals on Chris Bosh. And I'm kind of like, that's all over YouTube. Like, what the hell is this? What is this supposed to mean? Like, this is some kind of currency to me. If I can just watch it on YouTube anytime, that already infuriated me. But they've already got all my personal information, so great. Now they can go sell it to whoever. The other part,
buy the card?
I couldn't get in. That's the other thing. They had 60,000 cards, quote unquote cards available. I was like number 101,000 in line.
Shoot.
And I thought I had it bad, and then I see like some of the guys from the starters are like 183,000 in line, and I'm like, oh, this is pointless.
Did you want to stick around and try to bid your way up there though? That's where the exclusivity is.
I waited. I waited, and what sucks is, so I've got a friend that actually got in on Top Shot, and he bought a pack off the first pack for I think $15. He said, and he sold it all already for $250. And like the two of the cards he had only went up like maybe $1 or $2. But he got a LeBron card. I couldn't remember which one it was, but he did get a LeBron card that he ended up selling for $250. But he can't pull the money out because you have to have a minimum of $1,000 to pull your money out of Top Shot. And there's your scheme.
Just sitting there and nowhere.
And these guys, like, there's all these. Oh my god, I'm gonna lose my mind. But there's all these guys that have made a ton of money off of this stuff. Yep. But they were also already in Dapper and investing in Dapper and making money off of that when it turned into Top Shot. And then they're out there getting the packs, too. And this thing they haven't released what the NBA called, like, legend packs, old highlights, vault packs. And this isn't even available in China. So this isn't just, like, this isn't the tip. Like, if this is the tip, then this failed miserably. But they apparently have a really long way to go.
Wow.
Dude, that's crazy. And, you know, like, nobody's happier about the stimulus package than the owners of that company because, you know, they're probably making all kinds of money right now.
Oh, yeah, I'm expecting that email.
Crazy.
And now that everyone's like Wells Fargo's and Bank of America's are going to clear, I'm expecting that email from Top Shot like later this week to say, hey, we suddenly have this amazing pack together, like all these rare cards for $15. Come on. It's 100% going to happen.
What a ripoff. I still don't get, like, it just still doesn't make sense to me.
This is apparently, like, a big thing outside of the NBA, though. These these different things backed by, by the NFTs. Like, what the hell is going on? Technology scares me. That's all. I'm just going to keep repeating that. Technology just continues to scare me.
Like, when it wants to be tangible, I was fine with technology and everything, but when it becomes, like, something where you don't actually know what you're getting or anything like that, that's when, it totally gets, like scary for me. So I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, where am I putting my money? What are my chances of actually getting it out? What am I actually getting out of this thing? It's just like, it's just too many questions for me.
I heard this interesting quote the other day. To paraphrase it, something goes that eventually all consumerism comes around to consume itself, and I think that's what Top Shot is. It's consumerism consuming itself. Like it's consumerism for the sake of consumerism.
I'm just gonna go live in a cave, man.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Me.
Go all Mr. Fantastic, if you've seen that Netflix movie.
No, I just want to go live in a cave. I don't know. Speaking of Netflix, you know what's the worst thing about, like, it sucks because, like, I remember when The Office left and Parks and Rec left. I was just kind of like,
the worst time.
Yeah, I was just kind of like, okay, one, I'm not signing up for Peacock. Go to hell. Yeah. You're not getting my money, especially when they tried to put the Premier League behind the paywalls.
I know.
Like,
I can't watch City.
Like, no, that's not happening. You're not getting any of my money, NBC. You're not. But then it's like, so now I don't have, like, The Office or Parks and Rec to just put on in the background after work. And, you know, just Disney Plus is terrible on the Fire Stick. It's just the worst app I've ever seen designed for a Fire Stick.
100%.
So I give up, and I just put it on Netflix, and I started watching The Floor is Lava, and I just don't understand what I'm doing with my life anymore. I really don't get watching these grown adults going across a little room obstacle playing The Floor is Lava. I hate everything.
We need an old man support.
Happy Wednesday, guys.
You gotta switch to Hulu. Hulu's where it's at, guys. They have live sports, but as Dame tells us, they don't just have live sports. They also have reruns of Letterkenny, and that's my office right now.
Here's my issue with Hulu, and I say this as someone who gets paid by Mickey Mouse. Our employee package comes with ads, and that doesn't change until it recycles at the beginning of April. So guess what? I'm not using Hulu until I've got Hulu with no ads.
Then how are you going to watch the Geico with the scoop? There it is, 1 billion times.
It's just no. I've been working for Disney for almost 3 years. I deserve no ads, all right?
I remember when they first introduced like Hulu Plus, and it's like, oh, you can have Hulu now and you can pay for it. Cool. Oh, you mean I still have to watch your commercials? Nah, that's...
Unless you buy Hulu Premium. You just get fewer commercials with Hulu Plus, and then Hulu Premium is no commercials.
And you know, I messed up too. Like I'm so mad about it because I messed up when I signed up last year because you have to put what email address you want it connected to, and so my work stuff was connected to one account already. And then I was like, wait a minute, my ESPN account, my Hulu account, my Disney Plus account are on the other email. So I constantly have to like log in and out. Like if I want to use ESPN Plus for my fantasy stuff, I got to go like into a different window and make sure I'm signed out and log in through my actual work account and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, this is such a hassle. So all that is finally going to be changed in a couple weeks. And I can't wait because maybe I can just finally stop watching The Floor is Lava at 2:30 in the morning when I get off of work and just wondering where did I go wrong?
Wow.
I think we can start the episode on that one. Huh?
Yeah.
Before this gets any sadder.
I'm telling you, welcome to the like old man like support group podcast episode 1.
Welcome to episode 10 of the Old Man Support Group. Yes.
30s are the new 50s.
This is also sometimes Forever Toros, but today is the Old Man Support Group.
Wow. Just wow.
Talk about sports sometimes.
Okay, I thought I had a phone call real quick. All right, let's start for real. Welcome everyone to episode 10 of Forever Toros, the Old Man episode and show podcast. And good Lord, man, we need to get some youth in here. Like, I can't have Paul having like the youth podcast if we're going to be the old man scared of technology group. And I know Paul's going to be listening to this and just wondering. 'Cause I know Paul's not remotely hip at all. Paul's not in the know, except for when he used to like do the Jersey Shore stuff. Like that's amazing.
That was a long time ago.
That needs to be talked about more. Paul needs to do like an entire Spurs cast episode dedicated to like his Jersey Shore recaps.
I need to know more about this.
we'll save that for episode 11.
I'm pretty sure it's like permanently gone.
Oh, we'll find it. We'll find it.
Archived.
If they can create Top Shot highlights, we can find Paul's Jersey Shore recap. Everything comes back to Top Shot. All right, so obviously Austin's season is over. We don't really want to dwell on how Austin finished the bubble because it wasn't great. No. They went 2-4, and then they just got in the playoffs and got bounced out just like they're a 16 seed in the tournament.
Yeah, but understandably so.
Yeah, we can't be too upset. Obviously, Luka and Trey were in San Antonio. Robert Woodard ended up leaving the bubble due to a hamstring injury, so the Kings recalled him.
Right.
And funny enough, they won without him until it was time to play the Ignite and play the Delaware Bluecoats in the playoffs. So that was fun while that lasted. But we do want to give a quick shout out. We'll start the episode with a quick shout out towards Galen Robinson, who yesterday was announced as the 2020-2021 NBA G League Jason Collier Sportsmanship Award winner. For those who don't know what that is, according to the G League, honors the player who best represents the ideals of a character and conduct as a teammate on the court and in the locker room. Galen is the first Austin Spur to win the award, but hey, if you guys, this probably isn't like a trivia question because I'm sure you all read the press release, but do you know who the first player was to win the award?
No.
Wow, thank you guys for playing along with the game and actually making it sound like you didn't know. It was actually former Spur Ime Udoka was the first winner of that sportsmanship award. So
hey,
that's really cool.
Name it after him. That's like a shot right there. Like, that's enough to win the award, but you don't quite fit the mold that we like. So we'll just name it after Jason Collier.
Here's a sidebar with Ime. So Ime's winning a sportsmanship award in the G League, but are y'all familiar with the infamous bar fight story?
Yeah.
No.
I know Mike Taylor used to tell it on STSA all the time, but the bar fight story is just one of the craziest things I've ever heard. If you don't know what it is, look it up, because the details are scarce in my head after all these years, literally like a decade and a half of Mike Taylor telling that story. But Ime is apparently someone you don't want to mess with. Yep. So if you're going into a bar fight, like I think Steven Jackson and Ime Udoka on me, and I'm good.
You good?
That's all I want.
I'm set. Take on anybody.
You're set.
I heard he also got
now. I have to look this up
in a game one time too, like overseas. I can't remember who. I think was it. I'm not. No, it was like former UT player that talked about him one time, and he was like, "Yeah, don't mess with him." That apparently some fans like came after them on a road game one time, and like he like totally like got into it, and so. Apparently, that's not the only time.
Wow. So this post from Hoops Hype was from December 9th, 2007, and it's no longer found. Hoops Hype, what are you doing to me? Come on. We're trying to make content here.
So what you're telling me, though, is Ime is probably the last person you would expect to have a sportsmanship award.
Ime is definitely someone you want on your side and don't want him mad at. It's almost like, it's like if he was doing those Bruce Bowen, like, flying kicks in real life outside of games.
Wow.
In the proper setting. Back to the podcast that we were doing, back to the original show.
Well, congrats to Galen.
Yeah, congrats to Galen and his...
Getting not even a full season with the team. Because
seriously.
He didn't even join till, the second week of the Gubble?
Yeah, Galen only played in 8 games with Austin, averaged 7.8 points, 6.4 assists, 1.4 steals. And, I mean, look, I'm biased. I don't know Galen personally. I know people that do know Galen. Obviously, we went to school together. Even though I am an old man, yes, I did go to U of H later in life, and I am biased because he's a Coug, but, him and his business and what he does for the community, and I think it doesn't surprise me, because when you see someone like Keldon Johnson wearing wearing Galen's substantial worldwide hoodies, it's really cool to see, like, you can tell his teammates respect him, and he's really well beloved by his peers, and I think that's probably what made him the perfect Spur, honestly. especially when he got signed. Because, I mean, Houston had a bunch of good guys that were obviously going to the G League that year, undersized point guards. And Galen kind of just fits like the Spurs everything kind of culture.
Yeah, and that's actually, I mean, that kind of fit is one of the reasons why I thought, last August that he might be one of the considerations for a two-way contract, especially, this was before the Trey Jones draft pick, so we were really in need for a true point guard, and when you went through his stats there, 6.4 assists, that's what he does. He's not a scoring point, he's not a score-first point guard, he's a distributor. And I think that his play style and obviously earning a sportsmanship award, he's a Spur through and through.
Absolutely, Mike. Any thoughts on Galen's sportsmanship award?
No, I mean I just think that it's like you guys were talking about. It was a player that once I found out that he was gonna play in Austin, I was like, okay, well that's definitely a Spurs move, and I'm not surprised that he was named, but. Yeah, I mean, he definitely fits the brand. As much as I hate this word, but the brand or whatever of the Spurs. He just seems like a natural kind of fit. So,
which is why it was odd to see him not on the original roster. He had to pull him out of the player pool.
Yeah.
Just weird. At least he was here. Looks good.
Mike, I can't believe this is the old man podcast and you just used the word brand.
That's why I said I hate. So I was kind of on brand with my saying that I hate it.
Oh man, there's never a dull moment on this podcast. I swear, at least for us. There's probably people listening that are just like, "What is wrong with these people?" But this is why I love what we do. Let's get into the real stuff. Let's evaluate Matt Neilsen's first quote unquote season. I have nothing. He did a great job. That's the take. That's the take. I don't know what else you're supposed to say after 15 games.
I mean, I gotta differ. I don't think that coach did a great job. Even with the 10-5 record in the regular, through the quote unquote regular season, the first 15 games, and it's because week after week and game after game, he kept speaking on the same thing when we asked him about it. In the media sessions about your team came out and they had to fight back. They were clawing back in every game, even in somewhere where you had a 24-point lead in the third quarter. You'd let it get away from you, and this team just had to claw back. And that's where I dubbed fourth quarter Luka as fourth quarter Luka, because you needed his heroics to get them back into it. And every time, Coach Neilsen said, I don't know why this happens with the team. I don't know how to get to them. I tell them, but they're not responding for whatever reason. They're not playing tougher all four quarters, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back against Delaware in the playoff game too. You let yourself get far behind enough, and you don't have Trey, and you don't have Luka, and you don't have Robert Wood II to bring you back into it, and that's why you go out in the first round of the playoffs. And so because Coach Neilsen had the same question presented to him through 15 regular season games and then that playoff game, and was unable to make an adjustment within his players to impact them enough to get them to play tougher, I don't think it was a great season for him.
Mike, go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, to be fair, it was a truncated season. It's always hard, especially but one thing you like to see is sometimes some teams come together. It seemed like early on they relied a lot on Luka and Trey.
Oh, yeah.
And so then when they were without them, they were kind of, they were looking for answers. One thing I will say that I wish I would have seen more is some of the minutes, and I understand you want to try to get other people involved, but like Anthony Mathis, not only paying him 14 minutes in that game against Delaware, Delaware, which is a team that had already beat them pretty badly. When you're keeping like a flamethrower like that, kind of on the bench, paying him for 14 minutes, I don't know that I like that very much. I wish I would have seen a few more minutes from him. That guy, I think, given more minutes and given a more consistent role, could have. And I don't know, who knows? It could be a reason behind that, where they don't want to show off all his tools, but I feel like he could have done a lot more with the more consistent role. But it's harder, it's something that he didn't have the benefit that, the coaches in the past have always had as a full, longer, much longer season, and it all just came about. And then when you lose your two best players, and then you lose your third best player shortly after that, it's kind of like you got to scramble. So some room for improvement for sure, but I think they at least have the right guy, and he's just going to take some time.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I think that's my biggest thing is just, the circumstances he was given in comparison to a normal season. I get that, especially the last two games are extremely disappointing how they finished out. But I don't see, how do I put this gently? I don't think a roster where Cam Reynolds is supposed to be your best player is going to go very far. And that's not a slight on Cam. He's just, there's no one else around him to help him out. And that kind of also ties into what we're looking towards the Spurs doing moving forward, but we'll save that for coming up next. You lose Luka and Trey, and I kind of feel like maybe his hand was forced in those last two games to show off Quinndary as, make sure he gets his conditioning, right. Make sure he gets his run in, because Quinndary hasn't really played this season. He had the knee injury to start, he had the COVID episode, and then they just say, here, go to the bubble. You need to get some kind of run in. We need to see what we have here. And then he turns the ball over 8 times in a playoff game. And it's just, it's those things where it's just like, I feel like Coach Neilsen was really limited in what he was supposed to do. And granted, they could have done a lot better. They could have played better. But just the roster construction overall wasn't really conducive to a winning team outside of the guys that they had to start the bubble, which is why we saw them go undefeated so early. That's just me, though. Right.
But, I mean, you have to, if you're expecting him to coach this team to a potential championship, I don't know that was ever the standard for this season. As I evaluating him as a coach in terms of handling rotations, right? What you guys have talked about, reaching his players, again, the getting them to respond to a different game plan and giving full effort. That I don't think that it was a successful season, but to go back to episode 3 when we were talking about this, back in January, what was the goal for the Gubble season? It was the development of Luka Šimanić. Bar none. That's what it was. And he had Luka looking great. He averaged a double-double. 21 plus points, 11 rebounds per game. And he got called up quickly. And when Luka played, the team was 6-0. You can't ask for much more than that. He developed him. Even for the Kings, I think the Kings are really happy that Robert Ward II was a part of Matt Nielsen's team, because he developed the way you wanted to see him develop. Again, 16.8 points. Again, 11 rebounds. It's just weird to kind of see under Coach Ahern, we developed guards very, very well. And Coach Ahern was a guard himself. And then that's where I loved the hire, or the promotion rather, of Coach Neilsen, because he's a 4. And so he developed 4s. He did in just a short span. I think that he helped Luka's development. And then I think that he helped Robert Ward II's development. And even my hero of the Gubble, my favorite player, maybe not even a hero, but Nate Renfro. I just loved the effort that he gave game in and game out. And if you look at it from the development standpoint of what the need of the parent club is, which was developing Luka, then it was a major success. Hands down. But what do you do moving forward? If you're changing your head coach to develop what your needs are for your club at the next level, is Matt Nielsen still coach of this team next year? I don't know that he showed me enough to lean either way. I think that he's going to be a head coach de facto next year, but I would like to have seen players respond to him a little bit more.
I will say, my thing with, it's a success off of development of Luka, because the San Antonio rumors even have Trey Lyles in trade conversations, because Luka has shown you, hey, he can give you good backup NBA minutes right now, which is not something we could have said at the start of the season.
Oh, no.
I also just look at Austin's roster and don't see a true point guard outside of Galen Robinson and maybe London Parentis. Like, honestly, the distributing that Austin was really successful at to start wasn't there once Trey left and Galen was your primary ball handler.
Right.
And so, like, Quinddary's not a true point guard, and, I mean, the 8 turnovers is one thing, but he's never been a real high assist guy, and I just think... I don't want to say he can't develop guards, because Bryce Cotton was an Austin Spur who became an MVP under him in Australia. I really just feel
he was an assistant in Australia, right?
No, he was the head coach. He was the head coach. Yeah, they won 3 titles and Bryce Cotton got an MVP in Australia with him as a head coach. Like, I think he needs just more time, and he needs a proper roster, like just the bodies coming in and out. Some of these guys that I don't think we ever saw play a minute during the regular season, like Adam Okaka. I have no idea who that was until I saw the box score that night.
Came down from the Bulls. So he was a late assignment from the Bulls. And in fact, actually, I'm putting together a piece on wrapping up this season, guys, and the Austin Spurs made at minimum 12 transactions.
Insane.
In a month.
For 15 games.
12 transactions in a month. Yeah, it was a 29-day season, and you make at least 12 transactions in terms of call-ups, releases. I mean, even Jalen Morris, who was a part of this team, he was a addition, I think maybe in the first, coming out of the first week, when Kyrie Thomas was down with his hamstring injury at that time, and he got cut. He didn't even make it till March. And then you have to bring in, the forcing Quinndary into the lineup. And Q was talking after, in the press session after the game against Delaware, and he was like, "I'm still recovering from COVID, guys. Like, I have to clean up my 8 assists, but coming off of knee surgery, I hadn't touched a basketball. To come off of a knee surgery and then go in and have COVID, he hadn't really touched a basketball much in 5 months."
Yeah, it's definitely, man, I just, 12 transactions is just, that sounds like me playing fantasy basketball, honestly.
All right.
Holy crap. I'm not going to go any further before I go off the rails on a rant, but somehow OG Anunoby is still unhealthy. Come on, Toronto, get it together. Anyway, so let's evaluate, we've already pretty much touched on Quinndary, and I want to evaluate a couple of these guys just because San Antonio currently has an open roster spot, and this whole LaMarcus thing is throwing a big wrench into what we're going to see happen to this roster in the next week until the trade deadline. Whether he gets bought out or traded, me and Mike were talking about this before recording. We have our doubts that trade's going to happen. I think as much as the Spurs want to build it up, it's already been a week. We heard that he was going to be traded within a week, and there still hasn't been anything. And I just kind of laugh at seeing some of these games where the Spurs are losing, and I'm like, hey, it would have been nice to have LaMarcus here and there, but that's not here or there anymore. Like, he's just gone. We're never going to see him in a Spurs uniform again. So I do want to touch on 2 players, Cam Reynolds and Anthony Mathis. Cam Reynolds had mentioned right as soon as the bubble ended that he was waiting to see what the next step was at San Antonio.
Yep.
And he's still waiting. So I'm pretty sure that means Cam Reynolds is not going to see a 10-day contract or a potential 2-way or anything. But overall, Mike, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on Cam Reynolds in the bubble and what he did for Austin?
Look, I think what he brings a lot of positives to the team. He was able to do a lot more than I think I expected, and I knew he could score and everything else, but at his size to be able to fight for rebounds the way he did, and I think it was in that last game where he pulled down
Like 14 rebounds.
Yeah, which is crazy. And it's something I didn't expect at all. So obviously he's got the talent. You know, he averaged, I think, 16 points, 4.6 rebounds a game. But then in that last game just went crazy. So, you know, I think it's definitely a player. He's 6'7", 225, so he's about the right size for a player that could fit the type of player that the Spurs need right now. They need, threes and fours, I think, right now, especially more than anything. And so he fits that. And, he was able to come in and take on that challenge with Luka and Trey out, and then with Woodard out. So for him to be able to do that,
sure,
I think kind of shows a little bit about his mindset and, his willingness to step in. So, there's a lot at play. There's a lot going on. There's, other players, obviously, that have been mentioned that we'll talk about. But, I'd like to see him get some sort of a chance. I don't know what that is right now. There's just, so many unanswered questions that it's hard to say for sure what that will be.
Jonas, do you see a spot for Cam in San Antonio? Or is this just like, hey, thanks for coming to training camp, thanks for the G League, and you're part of our system now for the future no matter what?
Not really. Because the spot that I would see for Cam Reynolds would be if the team were to move DeMar DeRozan. Because he fits that wing role very well. The athleticism is there, but the consistency is not quite there to what DeMar produces. I think that DeMar is a key piece to this, to this San Antonio Spurs moving forward. I would like to see him come back on another deal, but if he doesn't come back, I think that's where you saw Austin lean on Cam Reynolds a lot more, and he even talked about it after that Delaware game in terms of saying, I was asked to do things that are more than just what I've done through 3 years, or through 2 years rather, and he was having to handle the ball a little bit more. He was just primarily known as a shooter, but he had to defend a little bit more. He had to ball handle a little bit more, and then you just saw him take over at times. And I think that you saw what you needed to from him to say, okay, if DeMar DeRozan decides to leave after this season and he doesn't sign another contract with San Antonio, or if the team decides to just outright move him before the trade deadline, then you have a guy who can step in and fill that kind of role. And it's similar size, similar length, and similar ability. Not quite the slasher, but maybe you don't lose a whole lot from the shooting side, and you have the familiarity. So and a very young guy at that point too. So that's where I think that he would fit, but in the current makeup of the team, there's not a spot for him.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see where someone... I feel like... I'll start with this. The Spurs are rumored around a lot of guys right now in terms of the LaMarcus trade and potential filling out the roster spots. They're rumored around a lot of guys that cannot or cannot be described as like a prototypical 3-and-D guy. And I think that's my biggest problem because Cam Reynolds is... DeJounte Murray's developed a nice little shot. He's been able to make defenses pay for leaving him alone, but he's not a three-point shooter. And I think Cam is that same type of player, just a little bit taller. He's not going to kill you from outside, but he can hit the occasional three. And I think the knock on Cam right now is he's only played 9 NBA games in his whole career, and he's already 26.
Right.
So we're nearing, where he's supposed to be in his prime, and I'm really proud of him for, doing what the coaching staff asked, taking on more responsibility. We saw that he can probably play a small ball 4. I just don't see how he fits San Antonio's current mold at all. Because you've got someone like Akita Bates-Diop, despite him being hurt, who kind of is a little bit of that same type of player and a little bit more consistent and also is just more experienced when it comes at the NBA level. And then when we touch on some of these other guys like Chris Silva and KZ Okpala, there are just so many different things where, like, if LaMarcus gets moved in a deal that comes with a lot of secondary and, two-way type of players, Cam's not going to see a spot in San Antonio, period. And maybe, I think maybe San Antonio's hope is what we see kind of happen with a lot of guys. Maybe it's, hey, now go overseas, go get your money, work on what we told you, work on the things that we've taught you here, and you just try to develop a little bit more in that sense, and then come back next year, and we'll see what you've got. And maybe that leads to another G League job, maybe that leads to another two-way, what have you. But he's already, Cam is definitely one of those guys that is in San Antonio's orbit, I'll say, where you'll always see them maybe come around for summer league, maybe training camp, and then they'll go on to another team, maybe go back to Milwaukee or somewhere he's familiar with the system, or maybe now he has that Spurs stench on him, where they're like, well, if the Spurs think you're good enough for their team, you have to be good enough for us, like everyone else in the NBA, the whole copycat league. So I also want to touch on Anthony Mathis, just because he shot 38% from three on 7 attempts per game.
Yes,
and I know he's only 6'4", but that kid can shoot, and it made me so happy to see. So, it just someone that can get the ball in the damn bucket, no matter what the scenario is just a nice, welcoming existence for Austin, and someone that just takes mostly threes. We didn't have to worry about too much of an inside game or him driving. He was strictly just out there to spread the floor, shoot threes, and when he got to the line, if he ever did, hit those shots. So, Jonas, what are your thoughts on Anthony Mathis?
Anthony Mathis can fill the role that I wanted for Bryn Forbes.
That's a bad name on this podcast.
I'm a firm believer that Bryn Forbes was just always out of role. He was not meant to be a starting 100%. Point guard. He was not meant to be a starting shooting guard. He was supposed to be 3-point support off the bench.
Steve Kerr.
You need a flamethrower to come out there. Bring him out, and that's what Anthony Mathis is. Now, after he had some really breakout games, and his best game is better than what Cam Reynolds brought us at any point during the G League season, because he had a pair of 30-point games just where he just went off, and he could score. He did show ability to score from inside, but man, when he was cooking from outside, he was cooking from outside, and he showed that at Oregon in his senior year, shot 45% from 3-point range. That's what his game is. And the Spurs could really use that. This is one of the teams that's shooting near the bottom. I think the team's averaging, 35% from beyond the arc right now?
Yeah, it's not great.
And if you find yourselves going, if the team goes into the playoffs and finds themselves in a 3-point shootout, they're not going to win that battle. Like you said, there's not a 3-and-D guy on this roster outside of, I would argue, Lonnie Walker. But I would love to see Anthony Mathis get the call. He made the most of his opportunity. Unlike Cam Reynolds, he doesn't have the stench of being around the NBA for a couple years and not quite making it. Anthony Mathis, this is his rookie year.
Yeah,
bring him in on a 10-day. Now, what scares me about bringing him up on a 10-day is you show him a little bit more to the league, and then somebody else is going to come after him. Like you're going to almost have to sign him because he has that big game potential to just go 5 of 7 from beyond the arc on pure shooting ability, and somebody and a real contender looks at it and is like, oh, well, we could use that, So I think that Mathis has the more likely opportunity than even Cam Reynolds to earn a 10-day somewhere.
Mike, your thoughts on the only sharpshooter that we've been able to really cover this season?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Bryn Forbes, because that's when I was looking at him, and when I looked into his numbers, I was like, it kind of reminds me exactly of Bryn, or at least the role that Bryn should have played. And he did the most with his minutes, because I think he averaged 21 minutes and still was able to get 13 points.
Yeah.
3 rebounds. His shooting percentages were just crazy. And then he had that one, I think it was a 21-point game at one point. I mean, he obviously can shoot. But that's the thing. The troubling thing is he's 6'4" guard. Right now, there are 9 guys on the roster that can play guard. And you could probably take DeMar out of that because he's probably not going to play much guard at all this season. But then it gives you another smallish guard and another smallish guard that's not a distributor. So, but I mean, it's almost like it might be worth it just to make sure that he's not out there for somebody else to pick up, because he's obviously got some talent, and like his shooting impressing quite a bit. It's like you said with Brent. I felt like the whole time. I remember when he kind of got into the doghouse with Spurs fans. First, it was because I think he was winning a certain amount of money, and I was just like, this dude was like on a criminally low contract, like totally team friendly, like let him make his money. And then second, because he couldn't play defense, so I'm just like, Brent is who we always thought he was. Like, and there's always my problem with a lot of Spurs fans. They're just like, well, he can't do this. He never was able to do that. You don't change your skill set overnight in the NBA, especially in like 2 years. Like, he's not supposed to be a guy that you rely on that much. He is, like I said, like Jones said, kind of like in that Steve Kerr role where it's 3 points poured off the bench when you need quick buckets. That's who you go to, and I see that kind of role for Anthony Mathis. Like I said, it's tough just because, again, another player where you don't know what's going to happen. There's other players, rumored. But, it's hard to pass on him because does it become one of those players that you hear about or that you saw that were with Austin or that was kind of available that Spurs passed on and does well somewhere else? We've seen a few players like that over the years. And, I don't know what else to say except his game impressed me, his, readiness and ability to even with such inconsistent minutes, he was still able to get in there and make the most of what he had.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me. I feel like the reason Anthony Mathis may not get too much of a look, and probably why he didn't get a look until so late in the bubble, I can't think of the last guy from Oregon where I just looked at him and said, that guy's an NBA player 100%. I don't know what it is that Oregon maybe just can't develop NBA players really well. Like, I think Chris Boucher right now is probably one of the better ones. I know Peyton Pritchard is probably filling the role that we think Anthony Mathis can fit in Boston. But the difference is that San Antonio can't take a flyer on Anthony Mathis the way Boston can. Boston's, trying to contend for a title. They can have Peyton Pritchard come off the bench and be nothing but a three-point shooter. And San Antonio can't really afford that luxury. It's why you saw Marco go back to Italy. It's why you saw Bryn go to Milwaukee, where Bryn can play off the bench in a proper role, like Bryn did his first year in San Antonio, and not try to get everything, not be told by the Spurs, hey, we need you to do more, and then have all your deficiencies exposed. So I'm really curious as to what happens with him. I think, if I remember right, he came from overseas, that he initially signed overseas in Greece, and then came this way, just trying to, I guess, get more exposure.
I think they drafted him, right?
Yeah, he was drafted by Austin in the G League
second round.
Saved that draft, not to there's too much shade there, but he pretty much saved their draft because the other two draft picks didn't really do a heck of a lot. So
yeah, seriously,
yeah. Caleb Johnson did a little bit, and Kasi Babu came back to the team late, but I think he's still on the average at 5 points.
I don't know what it is. I feel like the G League draft, maybe the first couple picks is always like NBA vets, and if it's not NBA vets, it's someone who was really missed out on. But I don't really expect a lot from the G League draft. I don't know why it's like that, but I think there's the talent pool in the NBA's orbit is just too vast for a G League draftee to make that much of an impact.
I think it's more about the having the returning player rights.
Exactly.
And having that first access to them for your G League team and being able to develop them up. But it's funny that you mentioned Greece, because as we're sitting here talking about Mathis's potential and adding another 6'4" guard, I'd like to remind San Antonio Spurs fans that we have somebody in our orbit named Dalton Thomas over in Italy who's 6'8", adds more size and similar shooting ability, that if you needed to bring somebody else in, if you're not going to go after a guard, you can still address that 3, 4, maybe stretch 5 if you needed to position with a Dalton Thomas. Another fix. It doesn't help Anthony Mathis, but
I just, it's one of those things where there's just so many guys that have come through Austin that could maybe make just the slightest bit of impact in San Antonio, but who knows? And that leads us to our final point. I want to touch on these 3 guys just all together because obviously these are just rumors. There's no actual tangible news on any of these guys yet. But one of the mentioned trades for LaMarcus Aldridge involved the Heat, which I feel like is a pretty no-brainer trade partner if you can get salaries to match. I feel like LaMarcus would probably thrive off the bench behind Bam. I feel like he's the whole championship culture and everything about the Heat organization, LaMarcus is perfect for. Obviously, there's Boston with their trade exception. Both Los Angeles teams are going to be interested. Who knows if, the way Dallas is playing, if he wants to go home. It's just that making the salaries to match is the hardest part and just not letting him get bought out. And I think if he gets bought out, he's probably going to go to L.A. I think he's got a home in Orange County anyway. But I think if you're going to trade, I think it's going to be Miami. And I don't want to focus on the other pieces involved, like the Myers-Leonard or Kelly Olynyk. Myers-Leonard is not going to have an NBA job this season regardless after what he did on Twitch. He's already hurt as it is, but that definitely solidified him not having to worry about seeing the NBA for the rest of the year. But the 2 rumored guys at the end of the bench, KZ Okpala and Chris Silva, one of those would probably be coming back to San Antonio in a trade. And especially if that deal's a 3-for-1, that kind of takes the last roster spot. Or if San Antonio suddenly gets just inundated with guys they want to keep, maybe you waive Quinndary for one of these guys. But I'm a big fan of both. They're not what the Spurs need. They're both high-energy guys. I don't think you're going to get KZ. KZ's a brilliant basketball player, a Stanford product. He knows the game really well. Very like Landry Fields type of echelon mentality when it comes to the game. But he's an actual rotation player in Miami. I don't think the Heat are trading that. Chris Silva, on the other hand, it's his second year in Miami. He did play 44 games from last year, but he's more of a garbage time role. And I think Chris Silva's energy, he's really humble. He seems like, just hearing the guy talk, he sounds like a Spur. I'm not going to lie. Like he's just a really high motor guy. He's a good rebounder. He's a good finisher. I think Chris Silva would definitely help the Spurs, but he doesn't have the 3-point shooting there. Chris Silva's 6'8". He's about to be 25, so it's just like looking at another, like a little bit younger of a Cam Reynolds. Mike, what were your thoughts on Chris Silva or KZ Okpala?
I like KZ Okpala because I got to profile him last year in like a draft thing, I guess like a mock draft thing, and I liked what I saw there. Obviously, he's not going to be like a consistent like shooter from outside, but I liked his game. Definitely very athletic, and for him to be able to play, power forward at 6'7", and been able to kind of hold his own so far, I like that. I have not seen a lot of Chris Silva, so I've tried looking at a few things he does, like, but he seems kind of like like in the same. He's like 6'8", he's power forward, can play a little bit of center, and his minutes have been. He's had a few games where he's gotten a few minutes. Like March 12th on the Bulls, he had 4 points, but 3 rebounds in 12 minutes. But you're not going to see a lot kind of like pop off the page. So I'd like to see a little bit more of him before I guess they make any kind of decision. I'm not sure exactly what they're seeing, or if they're just seeing potential and maybe a guy that they can stick in maybe Austin next year. Whereas Okpala is definitely, he's a rotation guy for Miami. I'm not sure that he'd at least be like kind of the bottom end of the rotation, I think, and somebody that they can use to improve and grow a little bit. And so I like that a lot better. But you're right, I don't see I don't see that happening. I feel like they like him a lot, and especially with everything going on with some of the other players. I think they're probably going to want to keep somebody like him that can play the 4 if need be.
Jonas, what are your thoughts?
Not interested. Just not. Okay, I'm probably in the minority of the fan base here. I don't want to see the team make a deal. I'm okay with even LaMarcus Aldridge just fading off into the sunset, getting released, whatever. Because I think that anything that you would trade for at this point, you already have on your roster in terms of needs. The question has to be if you want to win games now, or if you want to win games in the future. Because we're talking about 6'8" guys, 6'7" guys, and I'm hearing Devin Vassell.
Yeah.
I'm hearing his minutes disappearing then at that point. Because you should focus on the number 9 overall draft pick that you already have in terms of giving those opportunities. Trey Lyles, I think, is a better prospect than either of these two guys, again, because he has the three-point shooting ability, he has the rebounding ability, and he already knows the system. Now, he's up, I think his contract is up at the end of the year, and so that's where he enters trade talk a little bit more, but give him a consistent role at the 4, not at the 5. And with LaMarcus gone, I think you can open that up a bit more. Drew Eubanks, we just signed the guy to a 3-year contract, 6'9", who are talking about a high motor, high energy, good teammate kind of guy. Put him on the floor. We already have these pieces here, and that's where if I had to use that last roster spot, I'm just going to use it for 3-point shooting, which is where you can fit that Anthony Mathis kind of role in there. Because, yes, you can pick up more wins with LaMarcus Aldridge, as you were talking about earlier, John, about how, if LaMarcus was in this game, we could pick up more points and probably win this one. But that's not the focus, right? The focus is about, we wanted to see the young guys. You wanted to give them run. You want to give them experience, and you take that oftentimes at the cost of winning. Now, it's not the Spurs are not tanking this season by any means. They're still in playoff contention. This is just experience. These guys have to learn to take their L's and learn to take that without saying, "Oh, well, it's because LaMarcus had a bad night." I think that when you get rid of that excuse, I don't want to see the team do anything. I don't think that Silva is going to do anything for me. KZ is not going to do anything for me. I'm not even messing with the trade.
So my whole thinking with this, it's just, I feel like the Spurs are really desperately trying to find an asset for someone who isn't an asset anymore, and he's not going to be an asset regardless of where he goes. Boston, I know the talk about Boston's there, but you're taking away minutes from someone like a Robert Williams or Daniel Tice, and hoping that he can hit the whole logic is LaMarcus can win you one playoff game. And if he does that for you, that's enough. And I get that. Right. I understand that. I agree. But I don't think that any of these teams really want to give up a real asset for someone like LaMarcus, knowing that that's his ceiling. Right. And that's where I kind of look at Miami as the perfect trade partner, because if San Antonio wants a real asset out of it, you can get one of those guys and hopefully keep him on at the end of the bench or a two-way. Let them develop in Austin, because they're not going to develop in Miami in a limited role. And you can get someone who can help you now, like a Kelly Olynyk, who is an average three-point shooter, who came off a career-high three-point shooter last year, and he's a veteran, and that's someone that can help you. He's played for the Celtics, he's played for the Heat, he's been in the playoffs. That Kelly Olynyk fits that LaMarcus role better than LaMarcus does, because you're not expecting Kelly Olynyk to go give you 20 and 10 because he's earning $24-25 million a year. And Kelly Olynyk is, I think, a free agent at the end of the season. So it's just enough to get by to help out the young guys. It's just enough three-point shooting to help spread the floor. And it helps limit, I don't want to say limit Luka, because obviously Luka can only give you so much right now. But I would prefer to see a couple, veteran minutes out of Kelly Olynyk than Trey Lyles. I think Trey Lyles is kind of already... He has the talent, he has a skill set, but it's just not enough of what the Spurs need. There's a lot of moments where he likes to hold onto the ball a little too much, like he's a point guard. There's some times where he makes some really bad decisions trying to drive or shoot, and I'm just kind of like, it's like he's trying to play out of his game for no reason instead of just playing his actual game as a spot up and maybe an interior force here and there. So I'm really just kind of... I understand where you're coming from, and I don't think a trade's going to happen regardless, just because no one's going to want LaMarcus. I think he's going to end up getting bought out, and the Spurs are going to end up paying him like they paid Pau Gasol, and they're still paying DeMarre Carroll. The only other hope that I have, the Alize Johnson rumor, him on a 10-day would be actually really nice, but Alize also fits that same mold as a 6'8" wing who's just an energy guy. Not really much of a shooter, but, really good defender, excellent rebounder. And I feel like Alize may have a shot because, like we mentioned before, the Spurs are playing a ton of games in 2 months, 2 months and a week, And now that Keita Bates-Diop has a hamstring injury, that's not something the Spurs are going to want to rush him back on. So maybe Alize on a 10-day contract is kind of perfect. That's a guy that has a high motor and kind of fills those gaps on the defense on a third string, maybe a second string here and there. And at 24, if you can retain him and keep those rights and go into next season, because that's the other part of this that we haven't talked about. The next season going in with the Spurs have a lot of cap room unless they go try to re-sign DeMar and some of these guys. And if you do re-sign those guys, you're going to need those minimum salaries at the end of the bench. And Alize kind of fits that role. And you just hope that you can develop that shot, because he was a decent three-point shooter in college, but he's not reliable yet from that distance. Maybe sometime with Chip, and you can have him and Devin playing together. But I just... None of these guys are going to take Vassell's minutes, but Vassell's minutes are hardly there as it is. Same thing with Trey Lyles. Like, you don't want to kind of handicap some of these guys. So if you guys have any thoughts on Alize Johnson, please.
I like the idea of a 10-day. I just think that there's... The one thing about him is he can be signed outright and does not to be involved in any kind of trade. So that's good. There's something intriguing about him. I think they were saying in high school he was a 5'9" point guard. So that, he worked on his like handles and his ball handling a lot. And so, once he grew to 6'9", and he had it, and apparently he was always a good rebounder. So he has some skills there, and it would be interesting to see how he can play with that skill set, because that's not something you see all the time. And like I said, it's not gonna hurt you too much. Again, he kind of fits that same mold where he's an athletic, like you said, John, energy guy. It's not going to change a lot, but is it worth a 10-day just to see what you have there? And I think it would be. But I'm with you guys as far as like thing with LaMarcus. The only thing is, I hate to have that contract stretched out over like the next 4 years.
Oh no!
In a buyout, and then that's why I was telling I can't remember somebody else. It's like I would take a draft pick for him at this point just to get something out of it, and just so you're not paying him. But then it would take either Boston, I think, or that has a trade exception, or Oklahoma City to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're going to do it. And I think a lot of these teams also are going to be like, well, we can lose a piece or a few pieces to try to trade, or wait to see if he gets bought out. I mean, that's the one thing about a player like this, and when stories like this come out, is that you don't really have a lot of gambling room there, especially if you know that they're going to be bought out. So, they can wait till he gets bought out, or they can wait until the offseason when he's a free agent. So it's kind of like, do you really want to take that risk, or would you rather wait until the offseason and see what your chances are of signing him there? So that makes it really hard. Not to mention, like you said, that the salary is just a nightmare. In trading, that's going to be tough. So, I think they're pretty much where they're at right now. You might see them sign one player if nothing happens with Marcus, but I don't see a whole lot changing.
Jonas, any additional thoughts on maybe Alize Johnson?
Alize Johnson has my interest. He had a great gobble in my opinion. Real Robert Woodard kind of numbers. With a big time scoring potential, the ability to play a lot of minutes, as he did with the Raptors. And the Raptors had a really good team. The 905 had a really good team, I think, for the G League. They too made the playoffs and went out in the first round. But it's at 6'7", but that allows you to play a little bit more positionless basketball. Yep. Over like a 6'4" Mathis kind of deal. You're right, he doesn't shoot a lot from 3-point range, but you can see a bit of the stroke there. And you don't pull down double-digit rebounds if you don't have hustle, especially at 6'7". So I'd be more intrigued in him as a prospect than anything else at this point, and just kind of putting him at the end of the bench. It's insurance for injuries, and young talent is really more or less what I'm after at this point, because within the next 2 years, guys, Keldon Johnson's going to be a veteran. Yeah. Devin Vassell is going to be a veteran. Trey Jones is going to, Lucas Shamanich is going to be in year 4 here coming up soon. He'll be a veteran. Lonnie Walker will be a veteran. And so you're going to want a young group to come follow up these guys as you build a franchise. You don't need to get older. And then if you can get Alize, I don't know what his contract situation is, if he's a two-way. But off the stat sheet, yeah, I'm down with them. That sounds like the best deal for me.
Yeah, that's something Paul and I had talked about, because he was asking if there's any kind of hurdles the Spurs would have to go through to sign Alize, and right now there isn't. Right now they could just outright sign him. They don't have the two-way spot, so he would have to be a 10-day at minimum, or you'd have to guarantee him for the season. But Alize is definitely someone that the Spurs are interested in, rumored to be interested in. So why not? And I think that's where the whole LaMarcus issue is probably still tying into this, because then you have 2 roster spots if you just buy him out, and maybe you fill that with, I don't know what kind of veteran that's not chasing a title would come to San Antonio, but maybe you could fill that role with a veteran. Maybe you look out at other buyout markets and see what's going to happen. I don't think any of these bigger guys like the Andre Drummonds of the buyout market are going to go anywhere other than a title contender.
Right.
So that it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be kind of a fun week leading up to the trade deadline, at least from the end of the bench perspective. I don't know where the fun is in San Antonio losing LaMarcus, because I know that's a whole thing for Paul and for the Spurs cast. It sucks that this is how it ends, but at the same time, I'm really thankful. LaMarcus ever picked San Antonio in free agency. He didn't have to. It took 2 meetings, but it worked out, and they're literally just an ankle injury away from winning the title. Let's be honest. Right. The signing would have worked out if it's not for that, and then what transpired after that, I don't think anyone needs to be reminded. So that'll do it for this episode of Forever Toros. Jonas, plug away. This is your time.
All right. On Twitter at JarkClonus. With the Gobble officially done, we're putting a bow on that, and so I've got a piece coming out on the network, to take a look at that, and a couple of the other guys who had decent seasons, and you could see back with Austin in the future, London Parentes, even my guy Nate Renfro. I think that there's some real potential, and we'll start preparing for hopefully a regularly scheduled programming broadcast of the G League. When we come up in the fall, we'll see how that whole schedule works out, because you'll just be coming out of the NBA season, but I'll have all that on Project Spurs.
Michael, what am I missing out of promoting besides the Spurs cast, because we're on the Spurs cast feed?
Obviously, that's ProjectSpurs.com, ProjectSpursNetwork.com are the the main two to go see. So make sure you're visiting those. A lot of Spurs content still going up. Obviously, the Austin Spurs stuff will slow down, especially the podcast. But we'll be back when any kind of news breaks.
No, we're transitioning to the old man show.
To the what?
We're transitioning to the old man show.
Right, that's right. I can't forget. You got to start thinking about topics next week. Maybe like we can
or we can open up Top Shot packs.
Yeah, we can talk about Amazon always crashing. That'll be our next.
I'm updating my iPhone right now because now everything is crashing. Everything is crashing on my phone. I'm about to throw this iPhone into Houston traffic. I swear to God. So
Where
from
it belongs.
Anyway, so from all of us over here at Forever Toros, thank you for listening. Great episode, guys. And obviously be on the lookout for everything Project Spurs. And hopefully we can do some Spurs Rewind and rail more about some Top Shot or whatever. All right. See you guys later.